Welcome to the No Bull Political Arena with your hosts, Sophia Nelson, Bill O'Reilly, Brian Mistro, and TJ McCormick. It's real voices, raw politics, and no bullshit.
So my biggest fear is actually the whipping up of these stolen election conspiracy theories again, where there's not sort of this centralized, organized, hey, we want people to do violence. But if there's enough propaganda and radicalized messaging put into the ecosystem, there will be violence.
Right.
And so then you have plausible deniability, but you still have violence based on stolen election theories. And that could get so out of hand, just like January 6th got out of hand. My biggest thing too is there's going to be people who already believe the election is going to be stolen. So now you have this perfect storm, this metastasization of propaganda and radicalization, where people also are overreacting to what they saw on January 6th. Bam, boom, 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 right? So I am going to predict something. I don't think the violence, you'll see as much violence before, and I think you will see some craziness at the polls. Guys, I'm telling you, it's going to get nuts around July or August. You're going to see some really weird stuff. But I think right from the election, when they're doing the validation of the votes, the 45 days they have to validate by law, when you're looking at the 45-day downstream, that's when the nuttiness is going to happen right after the election. And I'll say this, these draft executive orders that are coming out, these are scary as hell, because what it's doing is it's actually radicalizing far-right people who already believe there's globalists and like that, taking over. So is an intelligence officer trained for years. Past performance is indicative of future performance if the data supports it. Right now, the data is starting to support it, because after the SAVE Act went downstream, why was this draft EO released at almost the exact same time of the Iranian actual activities? And then why did they say Iran stole those elections and we should bomb them anyway? That's a scary effing statement.
Yeah.
Denver,
And
there's a lot of people that could be watching this that
yes,
that are watching this, God willing,
yes.
that would hearing you with that extended and again eloquent answer, not hearing you actually distinguish by saying you said extreme right. Absent that one reference, there's a lot of people out there watching this who could very well have applied everything you said to the left. Now, I am not only not a fan of whataboutism, I think whataboutism is a cheap way to have a faux debate. At the same time, there's somebody like myself hears a constant drumbeat of Nazi, fascist, Gestapo as radicalization. There's a part of me that sees the last several assassinations and bits of gun violence in this country as coming from leftists, agitators, and terrorists. Trans terrorism seems to be something that is very frustratingly a real thing. Charlie Kirk was disintegrated live. That's about as nefarious as it gets. That's about as jarring. And there's a lot of people out there that think that, no, they could be conspiracy theorists or whatever, but they could think that was coming back because the Trump attempt failed. Anyway, all that being said, what's your take on the violence of the left? Do people like Hakeem Jeffries and others in Congress not do their part and know exactly what they're doing? I'll wrap with this. When those Catholic young children were shot up in a Minneapolis Catholic church on the first Friday Mass of the first week of school, the very vile Minneapolis mayor didn't skip a beat and was out there on the steps of the church saying we're not going to he didn't talk about the dead Catholic babies. He talked about making sure we don't circle some wagons and go and blame trans this or that. It's ugly on both sides. It's ugly on both sides.
I definitely want in on this, Brian, after Denver talks.
I've done this a long time. And I think the first thing I have to do is not get either angry about an answer, right? Or try to get too stats or data specific also. So let me put it to you this way. Everybody is worried about radicalization based on where they stand and what side of the spectrum they're on.
Yes.
The issue that we have right now, when you have people saying fascism or Nazi or something like that, is it gets very difficult for people to start to square Donald Trump having a Fuentes at lunch.
Mhm.
You start to look at his behavior and what he said about Proud Boys, right? To what, stand back and stand by. And a lot of people are like, well, maybe he misspoke and things like that. And you got to remember too, I got to be careful because Charlottesville was in my district, right? When you're talking about the Unite the Right rally. So you talk about wanting to have violence, they really wanted to have violence there. So when I think about Heather Heyer, or I think about Melissa Hortman, right? When you think about the shooter, right? When you're talking about accelerationists, we also have a big issue. I think actually saying it's just trans, right? There's this trans issue.
Not just.
Or there's a trans issue where I agree there's been some issues, right, with shooters that were trans. Also, we can say there's a lot of issues. Do we have a white male issue? And so now you start getting to this, how do you actually separate who's who in the zoo, right? How do you actually look at the data and look what's happening? When you look at the downstream effect of J6, when you look at what the Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or Three Percenters or the base or NSC 131 are saying, and then you see the Republican electorate rallying around that or going to certain of these like Marjorie Taylor Greene with Nick Fuentes and stuff like that, it's hard for people not to say that is, if you're with neo-Nazis and you're sleeping with neo-Nazis and you're spooning with neo-Nazis, when do you become a neo-Nazi? The flip side, and you said something that actually was pretty profound. The biggest part of violence, far right violence, was reciprocal after the riots for BLM in LA. So what we saw in reciprocal violence, we saw LA using these hashtags like, hashtag 1619 or hashtag ACAB, all cops are bastards. Once they did that, you saw the Michigan militia go into the Michigan militia house, and you started to see this sort of far-right violence memes coming out on 4chan and on encrypted app channels. And I'm trying to answer this very specifically for you all. What I'm seeing right now is that we have a couple things happening. I think you have the people on the left starting to respond to what happened on J6 because it's always reciprocal. The second thing, though, is that the far right is you're seeing this bubbling cauldron, right, of calls for violence of the stolen elections in 2026 and 2028. And I guess what I was getting to is you think the midterm is going to be crazy. 2028 is really where this EO and where they're really thinking about is 2028.
Do you?
Okay. So as I'm answering this question, and what I want to say is this, I have never in my life really worried about the far left doing a mass event, right? It seems like the far left, and we've looked at the stats here, has very specific spontaneous violence, sometimes coordinated. But when the far right wants to do something, it's really something. If you're looking at Timothy McVeigh, if you're looking at the big shooting when you're talking about overseas, what was it, Norway or whatever that was, right? There seems to be this coordinated ability for them to do big violence because they're much better at the Democrats at coordination and organization. It's just the truth. They also have a much stronger belief system than the Dems. When you're talking about white nationalism or Christian nationalism, there's a more thing, right? And well, I mean, they're very good with weapons. I have a few myself. So I guess, TJ, my thing is that there is violence on the left. There is whataboutism because the data tells you there's violence on both sides. That's not whataboutism. There's literally reciprocal violence.
Oh, sure. No, there's a distinction. No, you can have a conversation about both.
Yeah, you definitely can. But the far right definitely wins the battle of most violence. They're in the lead. And we know this by statistics. We know this by data. But we also know this about what they're aspirational about and what the intelligence sources say. So it's very, even when I was in the military, our biggest issue wasn't far left radicalization. We were actually taught about far right radicalization when I was a uniform wearer. It's still like that. So I think, TJ, and we can have a long discussion what's in the data and things like that. I try not to make this emotional in any way. I know people get very emotional about this. Sometimes I do. But I saw January 6th, right? And I saw the data. I saw the radicalization methodologies. I think this is the most dangerous time when it comes to elections. Again, when I say it's the most dangerous time, I'm not saying that it's 100% going to happen, but I'm saying this is the most dangerous time for election stability that I've seen. And I think it's worse than 2020, 2021. because there's still a majority of the Republican base who believe that the election was stolen. And if they believe it's stolen again, and they saw what happened on January 6th, bad things can happen. So I hope that helps with answering the question in a way that was down the line.
Brian, three things. Number one, I'd like to go back to the Republican FBI director, Christopher Wray. One of the things that Chris, and I've known Chris for years, talked about consistently every time he went up to the Hill to report to get his appropriation: white domestic terrorism, white nationalism, white Christian nationalism. It's a white Republican man who I grew up in politics with him, Denver. We're all around that same age group. And one of the most honorable guys I know, a conservative white man sitting before Congress every chance he got and saying, this is something we need to be paying attention to, and we're not. We need more resources. Am I correct, Denver? Did he not say it? You can Google this. It's very simple. His testimony's there. He wasn't, I don't think, taken seriously in the way he should have been. And this was leading up to January 6th, certainly after, you get there, and then you have Comey that comes in, and it all depends if you're going into the first term of Trump versus into this second term, this 10-year point. But I want to emphasize that because I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that it was the Republican FBI director who was saying this pretty loudly, that this was a problem. Number two, I want to validate something that TJ's saying, that I think the Democrats have done a very poor job. I was, of course, Team Kamala Harris when she was running. She's my sorority sister. I adore her. I wanted her to win. But one of the things that myself and others who were a part of the campaign were very concerned about, when the Trump team started running the trans ads saying she's for they, them, and not you, etc., a lot of us start waving the flag like, you better react to this. You better respond to this because this is a thing. And I think that the only person out of the four of us here who's ever actually experienced the wrath of that community is me. And Denver will remember when I asked the question at my Virginia University and got destroyed. It did extreme damage to my life, my livelihood, everything. I asked
remember
a
this.
simple question. I just asked the question. That community will take you out at the slightest thing, to TJ's point about telling you that you have upset them, that you are a threat to them, that you're a danger, whatever. And so there is not violence in the sense that, TJ, maybe you mean it. There might be actual physical violence in terms of that shooter. And you're right. I was appalled by Mayor Frey's, the way he reacted to that. The first thing out of your mouth is these babies lost their lives. This is horrible. But they always jump to the defense of this group. Why am I saying this? Because I think that a conversation none of us have had that we need to have is, how did we get here, and how did we get Donald Trump? Well, a second time. Part of it is just like this, because there's a large swath of this country, I would say probably a majority of this country, that feels some kind of way about constantly being told how they have to embrace certain things, react to certain things, have that be part of their ethos or how their kids are being raised. And I think the Democrats blew it off. And I think that was a problem. Now, I say all that to come back to where Denver was on this, which is, I agree that if you go to the Black Lives Matter protests after George Floyd, etc., and you look at how the left tends to do what they tend to do protests, then there tends to be maybe some violence in the streets, whatever. I don't think we're talking about that, because that is usually quelled by police actions or Kyle Rittenhouse, I guess, and others who feel like they can go out there and have the right to kill others protesting. So I think they're different, and I think they're radically different. And so TJ, I do want to acknowledge, though, and that I agree with you that the left has done some pretty jacked up stuff, which has not helped to elevate, to bridge divides, to do anything in some ways to put the country in a better place, as much as the right has not. So I agree with you on that point.
I know we need to wrap this up, and hopefully we can get you back on again, Denver, to chat about this because there's I have so many things to discuss with you, and but let me just throw out if we can kind of in a wrap up question. I'm going to go back to Iran for just a minute, only because Iran is, as we all know, when something like that happens, it dominates all of the airwaves and anything else gets sucked out in a vacuum. So we're going to stay in the vacuum for a second. Um, what do you see, Denver, from your perspective in Iran is what could be the most positive outcome and the most concerning? And I'm going to share with you just one thing that just happened that came out once again on the news, which again, you may not have heard about this. So this is CNN's reporting that the CIA is now going to arm the Kurdish forces for hopefully to get them for a popular uprising to successfully in Iran to lead towards a popular uprising in Iran.
Isn't that just
Um,
so 1980s?
Yeah,
yeah.
1960.
It's 1960.
I was stunned.
Arming
Yeah.
Kurds that, oh God. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
So
I saw
it's
that
funny,
before.
and I thought exactly the same thing. I thought I've read this before. So is that going
Same
to
thing.
work? I mean, what factions
No,
are we dealing with there, and
no.
how's this going to turn out?
Nah, first of all, why would you leak a CIA operation like that unless you
Mm,
wanted Iran to move on it some right? Why? So if I'm in the intelligence business, I'm going to leak something like that to see what Iran does as far as movement and communications, right? I'm moving them to a certain
Trying to
place. That's
smoke
what
them
I'm
out.
doing.
Trying to smoke them out.
As I'm just trying to smoke them out. So I also think, and I want to go back really quick, and TJ and Sophia and Brian, I want to say this unequivocally. We can identify through statistics so many, groups that we think might be overly violent. My issue is to say it's just trans or to say it's just white males or black males or whatever we want to do for criminal statistics. A lot of times that used to actually muddy the waters when a lot of times it's mental illness or specific people
sure.
with a lone gun mentality. And because, I have a very close friend who is trans. And I will tell you right now, if you think he was a lefty, he's not,
Mm,
right? And she's not. So, and that's the thing that I want to make sure I don't want to misgender, but her, but she's not. And I think that's the issue that we have right now, is that I don't want to think about this in any way. It's interesting when you talk about this, and I'm going to go to Iran, is that it's literally you have to follow the data on what's happening, what people are saying. If they say they're a fascist, they're a fascist. If they're hanging with fascists, they're a fascist. But if they say they're going to do violence, regardless, they're going to do violence. If they say they're a commie, they're a commie, right? People want to always talk about aspirational intelligence. What we found out is when people say they're going to do something, then they are something.
believe
They
'em.
usually do it, and they are that.
Mm,
Okay. I am not going to separate and say we have, just a trans problem or we have a white male problem. What we have is a radicalization problem. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this and unequivocal. And I think TJ, you understood. I do think there's more of a right wing problem than a left wing problem. And we can have this discussion another day based on policy. As far as Iran, as much as I'm against why we went in, the best thing for America, and you're going to say, what? Is for this to be over as quickly as possible.
mm,
And when I see tankers moving and massive weaponry, and now they're starting to use B1s with B2s, I was a B1 weapons officer. When I start seeing this, if they're talking about shock and all now to try to bring Iran to their knees as quickly as possible now that we're there, and that could help stop the death of American service members, now we're in it. There is no just withdrawing,
mm.
right? This is going to be very difficult. If he does withdraw, I would hope that would happen. That's not going to happen. So I can be completely against why we're there. I can be completely against the strategy of this, what the downstream effect's going to be, what we're going to do to the U.S. service members, what this does domestically for elections, what I think the threat to the 2026 and 2028 elections are for this. I still believe all that. But on the other side, we killed a really bad actor, and now
Mhm.
Iran is mobilized. And now they're spreading freaking missiles and drones across the entire region. We need to nip it.
And
So the
it
best thing
doesn't
for us is
help when we're
the best
bombing
thing.
camps with
Go ahead.
little girls' bodies, right? The schools and 165 children, because
Awful.
they use that tragedy, which is tragic, and then they radicalize and go, the great Satan is killing our children, right? And so, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Mm.
Well, the issue is that I believe this is the most incompetent military administration we've ever had.
I agree.
Okay. So we have incredible superior technology with incompetent people in charge, and stupidity is terminal.
Mm.
And that means there's going to be more American lives lost. That means they're going to have to up their game. It means they did not expect Iran's response. So either we finish this quickly or we get the hell out. Because if this is extended, dear
Mm.
God, right?
Okay.
Because other individuals are going to come in here. So right now, it's got to be either we're going to get over this today, tomorrow, the next week. But my God, if we're there 6 to 8 weeks from now, Lordy,
And you know who's going to
Lordy.
be leading the charge on a lot of that messaging of let's get the hell out is going to be Republicans. There's a lot of intellectual honesty. A lot of people refer, for some reason, somehow there's this theme, there's this meme that Republicans are just purely in lockstep. Right out of the gate, there were a bunch of Republicans saying this isn't what we voted for. Civilians, like just regular, like street level pedestrian Republicans around here in my neck of Westchester saying this is not what I voted for. I didn't vote for forever wars and all these external actions. So, I think it'll
I
be
hope you're
interesting.
right because, I was in the GOP. I tell you, it's not the same GOP. You got, I'm gone, Mike McCall's leaving, Don Bacon, right? There's people that I was very close to. And I get to talk to these individuals still. And I'm telling you right now, some people are so afraid of Trump, right? Especially in the re-elections and what's happening.
Mm.
But what happens if we go 70-30 on favorability to unfavorability? Does Trump double down? I think he does. I think he becomes more erratic. I think he becomes a little bit more nuttier about conspiracy theories. And again, if we don't get out of there quick and we see a massive public sentiment turn, you're also going to see a disaster in the midterms for the GOP.
Yeah.
If you see gas prices go up above 380 to 390, you're getting close to $4 a gallon. Dear God in heaven, it's a disaster. Now you're looking at a 55 to 60 seat swing. Now you're looking at the big days, right? Of the massive swings, despite how the districts are gerrymandered. I just think right now Trump is in such bad. I've never thought that they can make decisions this bad and not even have cohesive messaging of why we're putting Americans in harm's way.
Denver, did you see at the
It's
press conference, they asked him about the fact that, a lot of Europe is not allowing us to use their bases, et cetera. And the Spanish just said we couldn't. And Trump says, we'll do it anyway. They can't tell us what to do. Not only is that insane to speak that way, but he actually believes it because he feels very emboldened that everything he's done up to this point has not been checked. And now he's telling other countries, well, I'll just fly into your base anyway. Like he literally said that. You guys can Google it once you get off the podcast here, but it's serious, Denver. You're right. He is not straight at all.
Yeah, and it's so crazy with NATO rules though. Spain has a bit of a problem. If so, I got to tell you, Sophia, we could go into all of that.
I know, I'm aware. I'm just
American
telling
NATO
you what they
bases and
said,
things like
what he
that.
said.
It's crazy that he said it, but sadly, NATO, he's got a point. So
I get
but
it. I understand. I'm with you. I'm
so
tracking.
yeah.
So-
But yeah, it's incredible what we're doing right now. And again, as a warfighter myself, I just can't imagine that they didn't really know why they were going in. And it was like, well, they had to know. Well, then their administration needs to tell us the same story at least every 10 minutes. I think it's an awful reason to go in. But I also think if we don't get out quick, I don't think if we right now go all in, I just think we're in for it. And I think the American people are going to suffer.
So-
And I think American service people are going to suffer too.
I want to follow up on exactly that for just one second. I know we're out of time, but because of what you just said, I have just a follow-up question. So the White House just released their 4 objectives for this war on what they consider success.
They just released it today.
I've already commented on that on social media,
Hmm.
but
Dear
let me
God.
list these 4 off. I'll make them real short and abbreviate it on what their objectives are. Okay.
Sure.
And then you tell me whether or not we can be out of there in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Destroy the missiles and their missile industry, annihilate their navy. Well, shit. Ensure regime terrorists and proxies can no longer destabilize or attack the region or the world. And number 4, ensure Iran can never obtain nuclear weapons. The Navy, I mean, your local Bass Pro Shops probably has more boats out front than the Navy. But the rest of it, is that really accomplishable in a couple of weeks?
3 and 4 are impossible to accomplish in a couple of weeks. I don't even. Okay, you guys talk about, are they going to get in control of Shia militia groups that are being funded right throughout the region? Do you think that all of a sudden those who are aligned with Iran are going to say, oh, they bombed a little bit? Have we not learned any lesson about what happens in the Middle East on long-term wars, or what we actually build or what we create in terrorism? We can argue this all day long, about, well, we still got to do the right thing and the moral right thing as a country. Get it. Great. But if we go in on false pretenses or no pretenses, and then we back into objectives, and those objectives 3 and 4 look like long-term objectives, my Lord. Can you imagine? We're going to stop all state-sponsored terrorism from a country of 92 million people here by Thursday. And their objectives should have been well defined before they ever attacked Iran.
Yep.
So anyhow,
and does that require boots on the ground for 3 and 4?
Oh well, I mean, today I was shocked. Who was it? Was it Roger Wicker? And if you guys, I'm trying to remember. Roger Wicker said they can't. It was Roger Wicker and I'm trying to remember. Gentleman and lady said that they're not going to roll out boots on the ground.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I know we have to wrap up. Denver, we'd love to get you back. We'll work on that.
Sure.
To the audience, let me just say a huge thank you to Denver. My gosh, that was like reading an encyclopedia in an hour.
Awesome.
It was
Thank you very
insane, my
much.
friend. Thank you so much.
No.
So everybody, make sure that you follow this. Follow our media group. It's as you see it right there at No Bull Media Group. Go to YouTube, No Bull Media Group. You'll see this. You'll see the other 3 shows that we've launched or launching. You'll see the news and so much other stuff that we're putting out. Again, Denver, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you everybody for being a part. The No Bull Political Arena is on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us and your host a follow.
Hey everybody, this is Sophia Nelson. Follow me at I am Sophia Nelson on every one of my social media platforms.
I'm Bill O'Reilly, and you can reach me at Twitter at WFBOR.
Hey, this is TJ. Follow me on X or Twitter at TJ McCormack.
This is Brian Mistro, and you can follow me on X at Brian_Mistro, or follow along on Facebook at Brian.Mistro.
A No Bull Media Group member.